Good evening. You're watching AWANI Tonight with me, Saraya Mia. Veteran TV3 newscaster Raymond Goh has passed away at the age of 62. In a statement from his family, Goh passed away peacefully this morning at 10:40 a.m. after battling the effects of a stroke.
Funeral prayers took place at Masjid At-Taqwa in Taman Tun Dr. Ismail, Kuala Lumpur, before Allahyarham Goh was laid to rest at Bukit Kiara Muslim Cemetery today. Goh, whose Muslim name was Muhammad Zaman Goh, was best known for being the news anchor on TV3's Nightline News. With over 30 years of broadcasting experience, he also provided speech training. Tributes came flooding in after his passing, including from Prime Minister Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim, who said Goh's contribution to the broadcasting industry would forever be remembered.
Both former Prime Minister Datuk Seri Najib Razak and former 1MDB CEO Arul Kanda Kandasamy are free of charges over the alleged tempering of the Auditor General's audit report on 1MDB after their acquittals remain. This follows the Court of Appeal's decision to strike out the prosecution's notices of appeal as they failed to file them within the deadline to continue the trial.
The Court of Appeal Judge Hadaria Said Ismail said the prosecution initially had until July 6 to file their petition of appeals or request for a time extension. Till today, no application to extend the deadline were made by the prosecution. Earlier this morning, Deputy Public Prosecutor Yusaini Ami Abdul Karim had requested for the court to grant them more time to review the grounds of acquittals before filing the petition of appeal. Hadaria, however, argued that there have been 3 case managements on July 21st, August 28th and August 30th, where instructions were given for them to do so, and there should be no excuse for not filing the petitions on time. After the High Court acquitted Najib and Arul Kanda on March 3rd without requiring them to enter their defence, the prosecution filed the appeal against their acquittals on March 9th this year. Najib was charged with using his position as then Prime Minister to order amendments to 1MDB's final audit report before it was presented to the Public Accounts Committee in 2016, while Arul Kanda was charged with abating Najib in making the amendments.
The Parliamentary Special Select Committee on Human Rights, Election and Institutional Reform will call the current and former Attorney General to explain the decision to withdraw all the charges against Datuk Seri Ahmad Zahid Hamidi. Committee Chairperson William Leong said a report would be submitted after the proceeding and investigation were complete.
Zahid's case was handed down a day before former Attorney General Tan Sri Idris Harun officially retired. The current Attorney General is Datuk Ahmad Tahriruddin Mohamed Saleh, who started his term on September 6. In addition to Zahid's DNAA, the committee will also discuss the acquittal of Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin on charges of abuse of power in connection with the Jana Wibawa program, as well as the dismissal of appeals against former Prime Minister Datuk Seri Najib Abdul Razak and former 1MDB CEO Arul Kanda Kandasamy for allegedly tampering with the 1MDB audit report. The committee believe that these high-profile cases have created a negative perception on the Attorney General's chambers. Others who have also been summoned by the committee include Law and Institutional Reform Minister Datuk Seri Azalina Othman Said, the Prime Minister's Department's Legal Affairs Division Director General Datuk Seri Khairul Zaimi Daud, as well as lawyers representing Zahid in his case.
The Foreign Ministry confirmed the arrest of a Malaysian student in Oslo, Norway, on suspicion of espionage. It says the Malaysian Embassy in Stockholm is in close contact with Norwegian authorities to obtain information on the case.
The Norwegian Police Intelligence Agency, PST, charged the man with spying on the Prime Minister's office, Defence Ministry and other government offices in Oslo. This included illegal eavesdropping through various technical devices, which have been seized for investigation. He was arrested on September 8th and charged in court on September 10th with espionage and intelligence operations against the country. The man, whose identity was not disclosed, pleaded not guilty in initial police questioning. Norwegian authorities suspect that he was not operating alone, but have not stated which country the man was allegedly spying for.
The recent withdrawal of support to the government by MUDA has earned mixed reactions from political observers. While some lauded the move made by Party President Syed Abdul Rahman, there are others who criticize it. Political analyst Professor Wong dissects the situation.
Let me start with saying that the importance of two-thirds majority is actually more symbolic in reality. The reason being that we do not have too many constitutional amendments to be made. And if you look back at the last 3 constitutional amendments, they were all made with cross-party consensus. And when Syed Sadiq pulled himself out of this two-thirds majority, it sent a message to government that the government cannot take MUDA or Syed Sadiq for granted. So you no longer have a fixed two-thirds deficit there for you to embark on anything because you need to come back to negotiate. I think in that sense, it's not a bad thing for democratic development because it's always good for us to see any changes coming out of broad-based support across partisan divide. For those who criticize MUDA for being impatient or unrealistic, they probably ignore the fact that the largest parties would not give MUDA much chance to expand anyway. So what MUDA did is right. What is important is that MUDA should compete with PN. For among those voters who are angered by Zahid DNAA, rather than trying to steal votes from just PH, because that would prove to be a failure, as the state election result has shown.
Chin Huat also advised MUDA to use its position as a third force to push for better institutional reforms.
What MUDA and PSM should do if they want to position themselves as the third force, they should push for deeper institutional reform. For example, a mixed member system where voters get 2 votes other than voting for their constituency representative, also for the party they support, so that smaller parties like MUDA and PSM may actually gain representations in the House. Or they should also talk about revival of local elections, but selling it from a point that could appeal to the interests of the Malay youth and urban Malays.
We'll go for a quick break. We'll be back for more.
Lisa Surihani, buah hati rakyat Malaysia, on demand.
I love you.
Dia menawan. Mahir dalam bidangnya.
Cantik ni mati bukan pasal lemah. Saya tak nak boy jadi anak yatim.
Cekal menghadapi ujian.
Wong cuma nak kahwin dengan dia.
Pastinya disayangi ramai. Pesona lakonan mantap Lisa Surihani. Stream kesemua karyanya bila-bila masa, di mana jua.
Welcome back. ASEAN leaders have agreed to set up a Troika mechanism comprising the immediate past, current and incoming chairs of the bloc in order to ensure continuity in tackling the crisis in Myanmar. Here to speak about how the model could help the bloc in resolving the issue is Thomas Daniel from ISIS Malaysia.
The term Troika itself, within the context of ASEAN, actually goes back to the late 90s, to the pre-admission of Cambodia in 1997, when the organization then postponed Cambodia's admission after fighting broke out in June of 97. So to deal with that crisis, an informal grouping or a troika of the then three foreign ministers of Indonesia, of Thailand, and of Philippines were empowered by ASEAN's leaders to mediate between the different factions in Cambodia. So it's really not a surprise that ASEAN has decided to re-adopt this model. It was suggested several times in 2022, including by former PM Hun Sen of Cambodia when he was chair of ASEAN, and the original ASEAN Troika. One of the people that they negotiated with in Cambodia in '97 was Hun Sen himself.
Although there is no clear direction to how the Troika mechanism would resolve issues in Myanmar, he said the formation of the grouping allows a more structured approach in handling crisis.
One of the reasons that the Troika was formed is because there is a realization in ASEAN, a very belated realization, that the ASEAN chair by itself cannot effectively manage the complex and drawn-out crisis in Myanmar. So we have had, I think, 3 ASEAN chairs since the coup. We've had Brunei, we've had Cambodia, we've had Indonesia, and none of them have been really able to effectively manage this crisis. It's an extremely complex crisis. There are many sides in the conflict, and none are really ready to negotiate that. So ASEAN is really in this for the long haul, and the idea is to have a more structured system in place to respond. Even if there are no clear new approaches available, it's still a positive development for the regional organization in the long term. A difference that the Troika really makes here is that, to be the chair of ASEAN itself, it's a full-time commitment. There are hundreds of meetings a year. There are complex agendas to draw out, outcome documents to prepare, etc. And the next chair of ASEAN will be Laos, which is one of the smallest and one of the least developed states in the regional organization. Now, what happens here is that Laos can now count on the support of Indonesia and Malaysia on Myanmar-related matters, which then lessens the strain on other chair-related duties. And the same will go for Malaysia when we take over in 2025. It's a very important year where ASEAN's 2025 vision will come to fruition, where Malaysia is expected to shepherd the organization into the post-2025 vision. So having 2 other members, the Philippines and Laos, to sort of play a supporting role in managing the crisis in Myanmar will be very useful to the chair.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has arrived in Russia for what the Kremlin said would be a comprehensive discussion with President Vladimir Putin. The U.S. has raised concerns suggesting that Russia may be seeking to purchase ammunition from North Korea for the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. Kim left Pyongyang for Russia on Sunday on his private train, accompanied by top arms industry and military officials and the foreign minister. On Monday, the U.S. State Department renewed warnings that any arms deal could trigger sanctions against North Korea. Meanwhile, North Korea is said to be looking for much-needed food aid and possibly access to advanced technology to support its banned nuclear and missile programs. Putin is currently in Vladivostok in the Russian Far East, only about 200 kilometers from the North Korean border. But it's not yet clear whether the 2 leaders will meet there. Kim has made only 7 trips outside his country in his 12 years in power. It will be his second summit with Putin after they met in 2019 on his last trip abroad. Nobel Prize winner Maria Ressa was acquitted of her final tax evasion charge in the Philippines. This marks another legal victory in the veteran journalist's battle against multiple charges filed during the government of former President Rodrigo Duterte.
The acquittal now strengthens our resolve to continue with the justice system, to submit ourselves to the court despite the political harassment, despite the attacks on press freedom. It shows that the court system works, and we hope to see the remaining charges dismissed.
The 59-year-old co-founder of online news site Rappler faced 5 charges of tax evasion, stemming from the 2015 sale of Philippine depository receipts, a way companies raise money from foreign investors. She was acquitted on 4 of the charges in January. Ressa was a vocal Duterte critic and has long maintained that cases against her and Rappler were politically motivated. She still faces 2 other court cases, including a conviction in 2020 for cyber libel, which carries a nearly 7-year jail sentence. That wraps up AWANI tonight. Thank you for watching. I'm Saraya Mia, and good night.
Hello and good evening. I'm Melissa Idris. Welcome to Consider This. This is the show where we want you to consider and then reconsider what you know of the news of the day. Now today we're turning the spotlight on Southeast Asia's biggest democracy, Indonesia, as the nation gears up for its upcoming presidential elections next February. Now joining me on the show to help unravel some of the complexities of the state of the nation, we have Anton Rizky. He is the CEO of the Center for Indonesian Policy Studies. Anton, thank you for joining me on the show today.
Thank you
now, I appreciate that you made time for me while you were in town for the Asia Liberty Forum. I'm hoping we could begin our conversation today by kind of a brief overview of the current state of affairs in Indonesia. What is it that you would like our audience to understand about Indonesia? I mean, beyond the international news coverage that we have, how do we have a more nuanced understanding of Indonesia's current politics, current culture, current social sentiment? How would you describe it?
Well, you know, it's always a mixed story, right? It's very complex situations, but I think in general, Indonesia is moving in the right direction. That's the general feeling that people have.